I'm just going to do a quick sound check for everybody who's online. Jennifer, Matt, Mark, are you guys all hearing us okay? I'm going to close off our mic and we'll let MSU get started whenever they're ready.
All right, I think we're ready now, and it's my honor to introduce some colleagues from our West Plains campus, Victoria Howerton and David White. Victoria and David are going to present today in general about the importance of proctoring exams for online courses, which is something that's really been a topic of concern at every university which offers online degree programs and online courses in general. So I think we're going to have a lot of interesting discussion today, and without any further ado, let me turn things over to Victoria and David.
Okay, we're very, very glad to be here with you. The first thing that we would like to say is we would like to shout out a salute to all veterans. Today is Veterans Day, and we really appreciate your service. So thank you for that, and we hope to see some veterans on our tours today and things, and chat with them a bit. So thank you for that. The title of our presentation is Authentication, a Pilot Program at Missouri State University, West Plains. And we actually got started on this because we had a visit from the Department of Education, and they asked us some pointed questions. And I'll kind of get into our response to that and why we're doing this pilot program, and it will probably lead to a full-fledged authentication program about 6 months from now. So we can go to the first slide. I looked up some statistics, and I have in front of me 2 articles. One of them is from the Online Education Database, and it gives me 8 astonishing stats on academic cheating. And one of the most astounding ones is 60.8% of polled college students admitted to cheating. There were 30,000 respondents in a poll that was conducted, and most of them, all of them confessed, or 60.8% of them confessed to cheating. The same poll revealed that 16.5% of them did not regret it at all. Most cheaters have higher GPAs and similar types of things. And then I have another article about a poll that was done at Harvard, and that one was even worse, and it said 75% of the students polled admitted to cheating. So the fact of the matter is, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's online, there is this issue of academic rigor. How do we try to prevent cheating? How do we establish a culture where we can say we've done our very best to prevent cheating? The Online Learning Consortium, formerly called Sloan-C, has authentication of users for online courses as one of their best practices. In fact, it's the very first one they list. What do you do in terms of making sure the person on the other end of the course that's an online course is actually the same person that's registered, the same one that's taking the exam? They recommend that colleges and universities go beyond just the user ID and password. Right now, that is the minimum standard. That is something that the Higher Learning Commission seems to accept these days, but things may be changing in the future. The U.S. Department of Education came to visit our financial aid office, and they had, I'm the distance learning coordinator there, and Krista Webb is our computer Blackboard administrator, and they asked us quite a few questions about our online program, and they expressed concern because the Department of Education gives out financial aid. They said that it was okay that right now we had a user ID and password, but we should be doing more by the next time they visit, which we don't know when that's going to be, but we took them pretty seriously about that. So we spoke to our dean about our authentication requirements. What could we do to add a little bit of rigor and establish kind of a culture that showed we were trying to make sure that the student on the other end of an online course is the same one taking the exams and turning in the assignments. The Department of Education has approached HLC and other accrediting bodies, and so the U.S. Department of Education is putting the pressure on them to do more in terms of authentication. So that's kind of where this is coming from, I think, and I think we have it's prudent for us to do more than the minimum at this point. We're very fortunate to have MSU Springfield setting an example for us. Right now, they do require at least one proctor test or substantive assignment for their online students, where the student has to show an ID, picture ID, and take an online test or turn in a substantive assignment at a testing center. And some professors may require more than that. During this pilot program, for example, I'm requiring one quiz, one midterm exam, and one final exam to be done in the testing center. So at the request of the professor, there may be more than just one. And we do have a wonderful proctoring test center at MSU West Plains, so it seemed logical to us, since we already had the facility in place, to utilize that and try to take this step of having a significant assignment or test done in a proctored setting, so that we can show that we're trying to create a culture of rigor as far as determining the authenticity of who's on the other end.
And we've got a question coming in. Alternative proctoring activities, what might that consist of? For me, I think of like projects and things of that nature that you might turn in.
That's a very good question, and we have, particularly in our computer science area, one of our professors that's on our pilot program team has a project that's due at the end of the year that's a substantive project, and he's going to require students to do at least some of that in a proctored setting where they've identified themselves. And we had a few questions about what about little assignments or little, and as long as there are a lot of them so that they would make up a good portion of the student's grade, that might be okay, but for the most part, we want to make sure that ideally it might be a test, but sometimes that doesn't, some instructors don't even have any tests, so there could be a project that's done instead. So I hope that kind of answers the question.
Got one more question. Recommended weight for the proctored exams. So we were just talking about, just that it would be a substantive exam or project, something that's got some weight to it, but not necessarily a given figure per se.
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and we've contacted several other colleges and universities, and we do have. We haven't been given a specific number by anybody. Nobody has said 25%, 20% of their grade. In my mind, I think some assignments and tests that constitute 20% or more of their grade seems like a good number to me, but that's my own personal opinion. So I think it would vary by professor, but it should be something substantial. I think if it's something that's I'm going out on a limb here a little bit, but I think if it's less than 10% of their grade, we're on pretty thin ice as far as, how much weight that carries. So that would be my thought on that. We have 10 instructors that are requiring proctored exams or assignments. We're gathering information. Our team met recently. We didn't really have enough information yet to make a recommendation, so we're going to continue the pilot into the spring of 2016. And at the end of that time, we'll be getting together with the dean and the distance learning committee, and we will very likely implement a full requirement that our online students be required to take at least one proctored exam or turn in an assignment in a proctored setting. There are other programs out there, and some universities, I think, use things like ProctorU, where they actually have the proctors and they can see the student through a video camera. Criterion is another one.
Used by our College of Business.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, so it's being used here on the Springfield campus. And this is particularly handy when a student can't get to a testing center. So this might be used, if not as the full proctoring mechanism, these things might be used as supplements to the proctoring setup. And there might be proprietary ones also that are, made specifically for a specific university. At the present time, we're on a pretty small campus, and it's a little cost prohibitive for us to use ProctorU or Criterion, but it's certainly not out of the question in the future. Students might be concerned about convenience. I think on the first quiz that I gave that was in a proctored setting, I had about 5 different phone calls. I live in Springfield. How can I get to West Plains? Well, they actually were able to take their test at the MSU Springfield campus. Or I live in Mountain Grove. We actually have testing facilities that we can use in the Mountain Grove facility. So I think it's important to let students know that there are other places that they can take a test if it's not convenient for them to get to campus. Cost, there has been a conscious decision that if there's any cost involved, it's part of the cost of the course. So the student has to pay a $20 fee because they're taking it at a library somewhere, and that library is going to charge a fee. They would be responsible for that. Faculty might be concerned about how much time this is going to take them, what resources they're going to have to assist them, and our committee is kind of addressing those issues as we go along. We're learning as we go. But our dean and the distance learning committee feel as though this is not something we have too much of an option. We really have to do something, and this seems to be something that our faculty are. We're trying to communicate with the faculty so that they will buy into this and not be opposed to it when it's actually implemented. So we hope the feedback on our pilot program will help us to select the right path, and that we'll fare well when the Department of Education visits us next time. Now I think we're going to go on to Victoria is going to talk a little bit about the testing center that we have on the West Plains campus.
Oh, hi. My name is Victoria, and I'm the coordinator at the testing center. I've got a pretty easy job. I've got a great testing center. It's brand new. It's only a year old, and we love it. I'm going to give you a virtual tour as if we were actually in the testing center, if we could pretend to be. We're located in Garnett Library. That's on the MSU West Plains campus. And I'll tell you when I want to switch. I want to go back to the my pretty plant, because frankly that's the only bad thing about the testing center is it's kind of beige. And so I like to look at the colors while I've got them. We are located in the Garnett Library, and if you've ever been to the West Plains campus, we've got a huge grizzly bear, a metal grizzly bear out front, so we're easy to find. When you go into the library to find the testing center, you have to go down the ramp, and we're downstairs, and then you have to walk upstairs. Sometimes we have test takers who can't get upstairs. Most of them can, but we always have people sometimes. We've got accommodations for people that need a quiet area or space for a wheelchair or anything that anybody needs, we've got. Okay, you can go to the next one. Now you can see our testing center, and we have 25 spaces for paper testers, and we've got 25 computer stations. And we have it set up so all these tests can go on usually concurrently. It's very quiet inside. Any interaction I have with students is outside a window that's separate from the testing area, so we try not to disturb the testers that are in the room. We give, in that testing center, we give a lot of standardized tests from the HiSET to Praxis, the Missouri Content Assessment to the MOGIA, and we also give any tests that are online for MSU students or other people from other campuses, from other colleges, and any on-campus students that maybe have missed their tests or for some reason they need to take a test in the testing center. When teachers, professors want to drop off tests, there's various ways for them to do it. For the teachers that are on campus, the easiest way, at least for us, is for them to actually come to the testing center and they'll drop off the paper copies of the tests that they have. And we have you'll see on the left-hand side, there's a notebook, and we actually write in what time the teacher came, what they dropped off, how many tests, and when they pick up the test, then we sign out. And that way we can keep track better of if the test actually made it, if it was taken. It just makes it easier for everybody. We keep the paper tests in a filing cabinet, and we have 2 folders for each professor. And they're two, one's a blue folder, one's a red folder. And in the blue folder are the tests that are not taken. The red folder is when a test is completed. So a professor can come, easily pick up the tests that are completed, and it cuts down on mix-ups. Some teachers also send things to me via email. And those for the online professors or people from other campuses or just some teachers that have a lot of tests, different tests they have, they'll send me a copy via email. It doesn't usually work if it's an enormous number of tests. It's not a good thing to have to be constantly printing stuff off, but it works. The professors I work with are very thoughtful, so up to this point we haven't had any problem. It works really well for everybody. When a student needs to take an online exam, what they do first is they'll initiate the contact. They'll either call me on the phone or they'll come to the testing center themselves, and I'll either fill out a form, or if they tell me the name of their professor, I'll send an email while they're standing there letting the professor know that the student wants to take the test at the testing center. It's really easy for our facility to get professors to trust us because I have an institutional email, and it's pretty easy to see that we're legitimate. I think if I worked in a library or some other institution or place, it would be harder for me to get the trust of professors, but I don't have any trouble with that. So the second step is the professor will send me a letter. Here's an example of a letter that I get. Some of them are very formal. Many of them are aren't formal at all. An example for this is the perfect kind of letter. X student is enrolled in Online Biology 100. So they told me the name of the student and they told me the class. Then they tell me where. It might be here, it's the Metropolitan Community College in Kansas City. It might be MSU Springfield. It might be somebody from the West Plains campus. And then they say her third exam will be available Monday through Thursday, November 9 through 12. So they tell me availability. That's important to me because I want to make sure that I set up the student within the window. Now most teachers will close down that window of opportunity if it's online exam, but it's good to know the availability. Then they give me the link. They usually send me a password. Then this professor writes the time limit on the test is 50 minutes. She may use scratch paper but no calculator. The test can be completed only once. The exam is set for 2 attempts in case of connectivity issues. Now the teachers tell me something very important there. They've given me limits. They told me what she can and cannot have. They've also set up 2 attempts, which is crucial because not many times, but occasionally the computer will malfunction, and if a professor's only set up 1 attempt, then I've got to somehow contact them and get it set up again, which is sometimes not possible while the student's there. And if they've made a 40-minute trip to get to the testing center and they can't take a test, it wreaks a lot of havoc with their emotions. The teachers also put in there a contact information, an email address, and a phone number. And those things are greatly appreciated, and there have been many times when I've had to call a teacher for what I consider an emergency, and I always appreciate it when they're easy to find. You can go on to the next one. Now sometimes the professor, especially the ones that I've worked with often, sometimes they just don't get a test to me. And when that happens, it's really easy for me if the student knows the teacher, or if I can look them especially in their system, I'll just send them a quick email. And as long as I have 1 or 2 days forewarning, then it's easy to get a hold of them. So I do whatever I can to make sure that there's good communication between the student, me, and the professor. Now, a couple weeks ago, I had a student show up, walked upstairs, came up, stood in front of the window, and said, "I'm here to take an exam." And that was it. And I said, "Well, okay, who's your teacher?" Well, he didn't know. "What's your class?" Well, he wasn't sure of that either. He did know he was taken through the Springfield campus, so that was a good sign, but I had no way of knowing. He said, "Well, didn't he send it here?" And I said, "Well, did you send him an email and tell him you were taking a test here?" No, he had not. I guess he assumed that somehow telepathy was involved. Now, he was not part of this pilot project because, but it was a teacher who had established practice of having tests, but for some reason that student hadn't gotten the memo about how he had to be an integral part of, making this all happen. But that doesn't happen very, very often. By the time he come up for the second test, I guess this has been more than 2 weeks ago, that was probably at the beginning of the semester. He came up a couple of weeks ago. He was in full swing. He knew exactly how to do it. We didn't have a problem the last time he took a test. When students come to the testing center, we have set rules already. So if the professor doesn't send any rules or any restrictions, I have them already by default. Students cannot bring any personal items in. They can't bring any books. They can't bring any notes. They can't bring any purses. So I set it up so there's no cheating and there's no extra help unless the teacher tells me otherwise, and that includes calculators. So at the entrance, down at the reception area, they check in all their personal items, and we keep them in a locked storage cabinet. And we're very careful to make sure that everybody's items are separated. We have plastic tubs of all sizes so that we can keep everything separate from everybody else's. What we give to the student I try to keep everything organized. So I've made 30 icons, pairs, and it was fun picking out these icons. And each person who puts their items, personal items to be stored, they get their own unique icon. One copy is kept with their items, and then they keep the other copy. And to get their stuff back, they have to show this icon. And I have everything from a picture of Alexander Graham Bell standing with Helen Keller, to jokes, to just simple images. So that's kind of I try to keep it fun. They're nervous enough anyway. One of my main areas of concern is to prevent cheating. So when students go up to this window, unfortunately many of them are nervous, and we have, our railing is made out of iron, so I kind of joke it's like walking up, we've got jail bars as you walk up, the prison bars as you walk up the stairs. But anyway, when they get to the top of the stairs and they get to the window, I have them empty out their pockets. They're supposed to have left everything downstairs, so I ask them first. And I apologize for double checking, but there's no way around it. So I have them empty out their pockets and show their empty pockets. I review their coats if they have one. It's easier in the summer. And then I check, in general, I check their hats even. And even though there's very few cheaters, I have found very few cheat sheets and cell phones. I do come across them occasionally. And I firmly believe we have less of them because students know that every student that comes through is going to be checked. That's just a hard and fast rule. Unless it's my own daughter and I don't check her because I would kill her if I caught her cheating. Aside that, from everybody else, I check them thoroughly. And just so you know, I'm through Springfield, we're a member of a national testing organization. And so I get emails from across the country that talk about all sorts of cheating all across the country. Last week I got an email from someplace in Illinois, and somebody had sneaked in a cell phone in the case of a calculator. They had taken out the guts of a calculator. You can find a video on the internet how to do it. And it looks exactly like the calculator, except there's a cell phone inside. It's very ingenious. And it makes my life a lot harder. So I always check, for example, calculators. I clear the memory. I make sure there's no cell phone inside, et cetera, et cetera. I also check their ID every single time and make sure that their ID matches the name on their test if it's a paper test. And sometimes I have lists. So I'll check their ID against any list I have, because it's not enough just to check the ID, because I don't know if that's the person who's supposed to be taking the exam. So I like to have a match. I give students assigned seating. So I'll either put them down on a number at a workstation, a computer workstation, or I'll sit them at a table with a letter at it. I have them face me, and I make sure students are far apart, especially if they're in the same class. Every once in a while, if I think people are going to whisper answers to each other, I have them wear headphones, which I don't know if it cracks them up, it cracks me up. Okay, that happens very rarely. I did that last week because I saw some people outside talking, their mouths whispering. So here you can see two computers, and for the computer tests, on the right, I have a lockdown browser for people who are in the MSU system. And I can lock down the browser so it goes straight to Blackboard, and that's the only place that they can go on the computer. So that's really handy, and it cuts down on cheating, and I don't have to worry about them getting into other tabs on the computer. On the left-hand side is how I have the computer set up if somebody is outside of the MSU system, or if they're doing a computer test that it can't use a lockdown browser. And we've got huge computer screens, so I don't use the screen they're using. I don't make it the full screen. I leave a blue space around it, and that way I can easily glance over and make sure that they have not gotten any other screen or any of the browser screen, at least to the best of my ability. When they're at this point, I also the screen before. When I set them down at the computer, I try to make sure that I look at their Blackboard and again make sure that the name they showed me on the ID matches the name on the account. So I can have a double check that I just haven't let somebody in, any student who's going to take another student's test. I try to make sure that they're actually the person that they say that they are. At this point, I also have to worry about passwords. For the pilot project and just the general people that come in, usually there's been no problem with passwords. Occasionally, there'll be a password misspelling. That's happened a couple times up in the testing center. Sometimes I think teachers, in my opinion, make passwords a little bit too easy, like they call something exam 1, which if you were going to try to get around a password, that would be pretty easy. Then sometimes teachers, I think, are just out to make my life hard as far as the passwords. You know, they'll have RQUDAG 1 2 3 and all different it's like what they think is easy because it's like required ag 1 2 3 and they'll put something else. But with the combination of, I just feel really completely idiotic when I have to go back 4 different times and double check on the password, and I don't want to take the password out to the computer. What I find to be easiest is something like Pat Benatar, with a capital P and a capital B, easy. Or Ag Exam 1, capital A, capital E. That's super easy. And some professors will send me all the passwords at the beginning of the year, and they'll have a different one per test. That makes their lives easier too. I just keep it on file, and they don't have to worry about sending me a new email. And that's our last slide. It's the end of the test, and if it's a computer test, I don't usually have to do anything. If it's a paper test, I'll make sure it gets in the yellow folder I have on my desk, and then they'll get stored in the cabinets. We rarely misplace the test. We try for that not to happen. And some online teachers, oftentimes, I'll send a PDF of the completed exam. And I'll send them the PDF. I'll ask them to let me know to make sure it got through completely, and it just works like clockwork. In my opinion, one of the most difficult things for this online project, or if you require proctored exams, is setting up the deadlines. A lot of teachers who are not used to having a required proctored exam have been setting up the deadline, say, midnight Sunday. Now, I've taught a class before, and I've set up deadlines for midnight Sunday because I think, okay, I want to give them a maximum amount of time. But the trouble is, if you're going to a testing center, your deadline's not really midnight Sunday. It may be 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. So the deadline's misleading, especially for students who aren't really organized and aren't thinking ahead. Oh, we all know a few of those. But the other thing is they also kind of get cheated out of 2 or 3 days extra worth of study. So I would really like to see deadlines be a time that a testing center is actually open, so that students who go to a proctored environment, like if they have a choice of either taking one at home or going to a proctored environment, that they're not penalized by choosing a proctored environment. Another thing I've already covered is it's great for there to be 2 attempts possible in a computer exam. That's very important to have things run smoothly. And also for professors to take notice that a lot of times graphs on computers, I find those are the most it's the most common thing to malfunction when a student will see an exam, that the graph either won't show up or it'll be incomplete. And that's it. That's all from my end. I wish you guys well. Keep sending them my way.
Got a couple of questions for you guys coming in from online.
Great.
From Jennifer Persley. You may have already mentioned this. Do you check the photo ID against the student photos, like on their account, like, you know, we've got Banner, or for non-MSU students, do you request something from the instructor, you know, to verify that, or are you just going just the name?
I tell the students that if the cops take it, I take it. So I just take a driver's license, or if they're MSU students, an MSU ID. And I don't have a photograph to check it against. I try to check it against the person.
Well, in this case, I think what she's getting at is Banner, for us at least,
has
like their photo should be loaded in there.
We don't have that.
So, you know, and that's part of knowing where gaps might be that we can address later too.
But of course, if you didn't, at least in our system, I don't think we ask necessarily do we ask for identification when students get for students that are on campus, I'm not sure if we check them against their driver's license when we give them a student ID. They get their student ID, but if you don't have that initial checking them against another ID.
The Bear Pass office handles all of that here. But I believe that's part of verification.
Do they? And they may. But since, but I guess since we don't.
Because I think if you didn't have, it's almost like getting your driver's license. If you didn't have a driver's license, you'd use a passport or you'd use a birth certificate.
I see.
But I think that's just in getting your paperwork together. It's been so long since I've done it.
You know what? It's been so long since I've gotten mine too. I don't know if they ask for ID either.
But I'm glad to hear that in the Banner system that Springfield does require their photo, because I think that's something that we can do, and it seems to me that I've heard that we were going to do that in West Plains.
We're the ones who pushed for that originally here, so they could kind of keep up with students.
I think that'd be a help.
And then there's also MyEU will allow you, the piece of Blackboard we just bought will allow you to upload your own photo. And so I encourage my students to do that with a professional image. Just so that, you know, there was a face to it. You know, in online class, you kind of want to have that connection with them, even if it's fleeting. Any great pushback from students so far?
No, the students are. There's always the occasional exception.
Of course.
But usually, if you explain that it's to cut down on cheating, and also to verify that they're the same person that signed up for the class, most people are pretty understanding.
And I think having it be as straightforward as possible is also
right.
I've had a little bit of confusion. One student in particular is a West Plains student, but he's also in Springfield taking classes on the Springfield campus. And this student was confused because there was a separate testing center other than the online testing center. But that we worked through that, and he finally got into the right place. So he mumbled a little about it, but it all worked out.
Yeah, I would just add what was just said, David, that, you know, when the new testing center opened in the library here on campus, you know, signs were posted, and the Missouri State Online Test Proctoring Center website, the information was put there. But it's very important that it be physically located somewhere on campus where the students know where it is, and it isn't hidden somewhere, which...
if you want to join the discussion, you need to move over here.
Well, that's good. That's good. But
several of the things that you guys brought up at West Plains are things that we also discuss here for our test proctoring, because they're common best practices that also should be learned on all campuses when administering proctored exams for online classes, as well as pitfalls to avoid. And your beginning with your center is very similar to what Missouri State Online did with a small proctoring center. It was downtown at that time with just like 16 computers, and now we have double that and double the size and on the main campus in one of the major buildings, Strong Hall. But yeah, students, convenience for them, and hours of being open to serve the students. I don't recall, did you say when
I
you're
did not
open?
say the hours. I should have. We try to stay open from 8 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, 8 o'clock until 7 o'clock, 8 in the morning until 7 o'clock at night. What I have, instead of having people make individual reservations or appointments, because so many people have a hard time keeping it, and I have walk-in hours, or maybe they don't know to the last minute, or they've got stuff to do. It's hard to get there exactly on time. It's not like a hair appointment. You know, I've got all this stuff. You can come in. You know, I'll have something open. So I have open walk-in testing hours between 8:30 and 11:30 in the morning. They can come anytime, take any kind of test they want, and I'll stay as long as they need to. And then we have, again, open walk-in hours from 2 o'clock in the afternoon all the way till 6 o'clock at night. They can walk in any time and take any kind of test. Now, what that means is I have a gap between 11:30 and 2 o'clock. I'm usually there. I take a floating lunch hour, but because I don't know if somebody's going to come in at 11:30 and take a compass exam and be there for 2 hours, or maybe I'll be free. So I have this gap that's usually covered. If somebody needs a test during that time, they can make an appointment then, and then I'll stay. But
Exactly, and that's another similar experience to ours. Our hours, we have one late night every week, and then during the middle of the week. And you don't make an appointment, because I think if anyone out there's had experience of starting a test proctoring center, you realize that keeping appointments does not work because the students fail to show up at the time. So having walk-ins, working with faculty so you know what tests are coming up to be proctored and about how much time, maybe a 3-day period to come in to take the exam, so that there's very little waiting for students in the proctoring center to get a computer. Do you have any lines or
we are blessed with such a huge testing center at this point. I have not had, the only holdup is me. How long it would take me to get individually students lined up. Now, if I have a major standardized test like HiSET, if I have 15 people taking a HiSET, then sometimes there might be a wait of a couple people in front, but that doesn't usually happen.
Got a question coming in from online. And I know this is obviously, you guys are running a pilot project, so it's not critical so much as, looking forward, do we think verifying student identity once during the semester is really sufficient? I know that's the standard most of us are starting with, because you've got to start somewhere. But, as we kind of get used to the technology and kind of get students accustomed to what they need to deal with, should that be something that's adjusted? I know I teach a project-based class, and so for me it's like, well, okay, when do I want to have them come in? It's almost, I'm having to artificially move things around to get that authentication time in this class.
Well, you're really, I think, talking about, I think speaking for all of us here, are three things. Authentication of identity, which is a big concern, which is like fraud. And then you have the cheating, which would be like crib notes, or the cell phone built into the calculator. And then you just have the logistics of trying to run a proctoring center so that it meets the needs of the
Well, I'm not even talking that necessarily it would be a proctoring center. Looking forward, some of these tools may come down in cost. So if we have the option to do this, as much as we want, just kind of hypothetically, I'm curious what you guys think the target should be for that,
Well, I think the fraud and the cheating just go hand in hand. Why else are you going to pretend to be somebody else? Take the class if you're not actually officially enrolled in it. Well, probably to do your brother's work or your son's work. Your son needs a degree. You know how to do it. It's just to prevent cheating. So I think whatever we can do to prevent cheating and fraud.
Well, and at the same time, it's got to be built into the sense of community in the class and not penalizing. Not, I think you're going to cheat, so this is how we are. It's, this is part of ensuring that academic.
You don't want to do a cat and mouse game with your students, like,
Right, absolutely.
They detect that. But the purpose is for accreditation's sake, and that's good for the students, that your institution they're attending is accredited and these best practice and standards, and with the technology advancing all the time, to try to keep pace with the novel ways that students cheat.
Yeah, and I just think you say this is part of our academic rigor that ensures that you have your university that you will receive your degree from has a good reputation, a good solid reputation.
Right.
Well, and I think about even, the tools we're using right now. As we get further and we can expect more from students, I think, being able to have everybody check in through video,
Right.
informally.
Right.
These are class discussion times, something like that. Not necessarily the whole class might be synchronous, but have pieces of it built that way for kind of less formal authentication, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I think the collaborate is going to be a big thing in that regard.
So it's nice to see these tools advance.
Another area I just throw out in terms of fraud is financial aid fraud that students do when signing up for online classes. And our financial aid department has a method set up where they can find that there's one person applying as 6 different people coming out of a single location. There's some kind of they're in cahoots with each other and protect that. That's another part of the bigger picture.
And it's to protect not only the university, but it's to protect the students who are in the class. Because if you do all the work like you should, and you do the things that you need to do, it would be a sense of security to know that there's a protection that your fellow classmates are going to do likewise, and you're not going to be penalized for being honest.
And your institution doesn't have to pay back out of their own pocket the financial aid that somebody took off with.
Oh. Yeah.
And
good point. Yeah.
Any other questions?
That's what they do it for. They steal the financial aid. Oh my gosh.
And there's a new company out there. What is it? Why Study or something?
Okay, because there's actually one proctoring service that does work with the NSA. It's a little terrifying.
I did have one emotional meltdown as some student had severe test anxiety, and that's the one part I find that I want a hotline to the professor when their student has a meltdown, because suddenly I'm the authority figure, as far as trying to calm somebody down, and I felt really sorry for this student, and we worked it out, but just be prepared, you might get an emergency phone call.
Well, and even more, I think, when they don't have to. When they're doing it online in their own dorm or in their own, area with the remote proctoring, the panic is overwhelming.
The remote proctoring, yeah.
So some of those tools, I think, are very intimidating to students that otherwise might be okay in an online class. It's that extra test anxiety plus authentication anxiety builds very quickly. I think that's why we've got to make sure we're telling them everything up front and giving them those safety nets. They need my phone number so they can just call.
I bought her lavender to smell next time she came into the office.
Well, Victoria, I think that something you said is very true, is in order to gain credibility with the faculty, you have to have that sort of personalized relationship with them so that they know you and they feel safe sending their students to be proctored, even if they have to go through you to another location on campus. And we almost here at Missouri State have a clientele with faculty and the coordinator for our testing center, so that they work very smoothly together.
Good.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
I appreciate sharing. It makes me feel less isolated.
Yeah, it's always good to share. Since you're here today, let's go over to the proctoring center.
Okay, I'd like to see. You got a new one.
And this is probably something that you guys will be tracking far into the future. We do have
I do have a question for the audience, and that is, it is my understanding that OTC already does something similar to what we're doing. They do have a proctoring center.
And they're using ProctorU.
And I believe Evangel also does the similar type of thing. So I guess that would be my question is, are most of the other universities that are participating in this are already doing something similar? I think the answer is yes, but I'd be interested to hear from them.
We get OTC students come to our testing center.
It'll be something that you guys may want to map going forward, but it'd be interesting to see especially if you were to look at remote proctoring in the future also, you know, does that high stakes assessment being proctored make a difference in student achievement? And I think as they get more familiar with it, any differential will shrink measurably.
Yes.
I think the proctoring center probably less different than taking it in class, but with the remote proctoring and as a possibility later down the road in the mix, it might be interesting.
Yeah.
I think it will come in the mix. David, you had talked about your test proctoring and OTC. OTC charges a small fee if you're not an OTC student.
Okay.
How do you work with students that are not West Plains MSU students?
We also charge.
Okay, so Angela's going to be piloting Respondus in the spring,
Oh, great.
which we have available here as well. So.
That's good feedback. Thank you.
But we just had a question here Victoria was going to answer about charging for use of the test proctoring center by non-West Plains MSU students.
Non-MSU students, anybody outside of the system. And unless they have an agreement with us, we do charge them $10 for the first hour, $9 for the second hour, pretty low fee. A lot of places charge more. We try to be as reasonable as we can, but it seems silly not to charge something because, you know, somebody's studying at BYU or, you know, California, and they're taking an online exam, then we do.
And that's another thing that's really cool is that Victoria is really an expert at contacting other places that can help students. If a student is in Ohio or California, she has wonderful ability to assist the student to find a place.
It's called Google. It's a wonderful capability.
Did you say you're a member of the NCTA, National College Testing?
Off of Springfield. We go in through Springfield.
Oh, the membership that we have.
Yes, I piggybacked on your membership.
Oh, that's right.
So then Christy's just outlining for us, MSU has a couple of different options right now. Respondus Lockdown Browser and Monitor are kind of built in. Anybody can use those. The business college is working with Criterion. And then we have the on-campus proctoring center for online as well.
Great. Thank you for that.
But we use the Respondus Lockdown Browser in the testing center, and unfortunately, it only works within the MSU system. So if you're not on our MSU Blackboard, it doesn't work.
Yeah, I'll be testing those out this spring. Interesting.
Good.
Well. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We greatly appreciate you guys coming down to chat with us. Great discussion. So I think we're all very much in the same boat, and we'll kind of see where we all go pushing forward.
Great. Appreciate being here.